Okay, so I will continue letting people in, but I think we should get started. And welcome everyone to the Sierra Nevada Alliance's October webinar. My name is Jennifer Marshall, and I'm the Alliance's Development and Community Engagement Director. And I am so happy that all of you could make it here this afternoon. And today I'm honored to introduce a good friend, Gina Woods with Woods Apothecary, to share her knowledge of mushrooms of the Sierra. And obviously this is a very popular topic. This is one of the best attended we've had all year. And so thanks once again for joining us. And I will just quickly introduce Gina before I hand it over for her to take the stage. So Gina is a local herbalist, nutritionist, and chef. She is the practitioner, head medicine maker, and owner of her local Tahoe business, Woods Apothecary. She has skillfully taught classes on flora and funga for nearly 2 decades. A hobby mycologist and ecologist, Gina has foraged for wild foods and mushrooms all over the globe, but has an affinity for the Sierra Nevada, where she calls home. Gina shares her passion for ecology, foraging wild foods, herbalism, cooking, survival skills, and much more locally and internationally, teaching classes and working with people to improve their health and wellness. So if you have any questions, you can please add them to the chat, and at the end we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers, but now I will turn it over to Gina.
Hello and welcome all of you fungi and fungals. So I am really happy and honored to be here to share some time with you today and talk about one of my favorite subjects, the fungal allies of our local area to the Sierra Nevada mountain range. So as Jennifer stated, I've been an herbalist and ecologist for pretty much my whole adult life. I grew up half of my childhood in Italy, where from a very young age I learned about foraging wild foods, and we started foraging for mushrooms when I was really young as well. And so it stoked my passion for ecology and wild foods and herbalism. And so really primed me to follow my life's work and my path in this planet, which is all things natural. I love learning about ecology and wild foods. I have worked as a chef in my past lifetimes when I was in my 20s, traveling around the Bay Area and Mendocino County, where I foraged for mushrooms, and then we would feature them on the dinner plate that evening. So it's been a lifelong pursuit and passion of mine. And seeing that we just have a little while to share some time today, I wanted to dive right in and start talking about the mushrooms that we have here locally, and also a little bit of mycology and forest ecology, because this is the important part. We're all here because we're curious about mushrooms, and it's a very popular subject. People are really diving into all of the different aspects about mycology and mushrooms because they're so fascinating and delicious, and a huge part of the Earth's ecosystem. So I wanted to get started and kind of talking about what are mushrooms? So mushrooms, the mushroom that you're familiar with seeing is actually the fruiting body of an underground network called mycelium. And the mycelium are these filamentous thread-like structures that are kind of like, we could think of it as being the roots of the mushroom bodies. There's different phases of mushroom growth and distribution, and they're so fascinating. There's been so many research topics about how mushrooms came to be and how they came to be on our planet. They've been around since the emergence of Earth's ecosystem. And so they have been doing their magic for time's beginning. So what we're going to talk about today too is, what is it that the mushroom mycelium does for the ecosystem? So the mycelium is an incredible entity where it grows underneath the soil surface, and there are so many fascinating things about mycelium. So mycelium contains some of the medicinal properties as well as the fruiting bodies. And studies have shown that mycelium is kind of like a communicator as well. It weaves its way through the fabric of soil, and the mycelium itself helps to digest forest matter and animal matter, and it's the grand decomposer. And it's been shown that the filamentous network of mycelium even connects and acts as kind of a communication board for trees and plants that it intersects with. So trees have been shown to utilize this mycelium network to communicate with each other. They can communicate the weather, basically, if there's an upcoming drought or if there's a persisting drought. It kind of communicates information similar, almost the way I think about it is like our nervous system. In nature, you'll find there are repeating patterns. And this is the way that we can really learn about our environment, is really looking deeply into these natural repeating patterns, because it goes anywhere from the human body and the earth and ecosystems and even cosmology. So really paying attention to these repeating patterns will help us learn about other natural entities. So the mycelium kind of acts like a nervous system network in the way that it communicates information from plants and trees to other plants and trees. So super fascinating about that. And how mushroom bodies occur is, it starts with a spore, and spores are microscopic entities formed by the fruiting body of a mushroom. What came first, the fruiting body or the mycelium? Who knows? But it's said that the sporification of a mushroom, when it lands, it starts to create the mycelial bodies. So mushrooms will spore, and it can travel throughout really large distances. They say that even through space, the spores of mushrooms have traveled. So an interesting other little side bit about that. Where did mushrooms come from? Where did we all come from? I don't know, but here we are learning about mushrooms. So once the mycelium begins to grow, it extends out, decomposing all the natural parts of, it decomposes wood and animal products and anything really in the forest floor. And really, mycelium is this incredible network that interweaves all of the soil and really is such an incredible benefiting microorganism. We wouldn't be here without mycelium, basically, because it's the grand decomposer and regenerative factor for soil. So another part about that is, if we really want to ensure the health of our soil, we need to include and think a little more broadly about mycelium. It's said that mycelium is one of the largest growing living entities in the world, and there's this research about that it's the honey mushroom colony in Oregon has this gigantic mycelial network that's one of the largest living organisms on the planet. So super interesting about that. Mycelium is an incredible entity. And so from the mycelium, which is, we can think of it as the roots of the mushroom, pop up these fruiting bodies in a favorable condition. Typically, the humidity level, the temperature, and there are different factors that stimulate the growth of these fruiting bodies of the mushrooms, of what we want to gather and eat and share with our loved ones. And mushroom hunting is just a joy. It's so fun, and we could do it with our kids and grandparents, and in Italy where I grew up, we would go with the whole family, grandparents and all the way to the babies, and everybody would kind of take part in finding these mushrooms and enjoying time outside and learning about nature. Excuse me, is an incredible legacy that we can pass on to our children. My kids love mushroom hunting. Since they were really little babies, we would go out and they love to hold the mushrooms, and I think it really helps learning about the ecology and wild foods, and how we can be interdependent with our natural surroundings. And it's just fun. And then eating mushrooms has its own benefit, and its amazing benefits of nutritional profiles and medicinal qualities, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So in researching a little bit about mushrooms, we'll find that 50% of the mushrooms that are growing in nature are inedible. Okay, about 20% of those mushrooms can make you ill, and 1% are deadly. So being really on top of your mushroom identification skills when you're harvesting mushrooms from the wild is of utmost importance. Every year people die from mushroom poisoning, and it's really just a matter of being hyper selective. And especially with such a short little time that we're together here today, we're going to really just talk about a few very easily identifiable mushrooms and we're going to talk about the types of identities to look for and characteristics to look for when you're identifying wild mushrooms. So we don't want anybody to get sick or die from eating a wild mushroom, because that takes all the fun out of it, doesn't it? So, and I'm not a big experimenter. I'm not one of those mushroom harvesting folks that will be like, oh, well, this looks kind of interesting, let's experiment. Like, no, you know, I'm a single mom, so I want to be around for my kids and enjoy more mushroom hunting. So there are a few different types of identification characteristics that we look for when we're harvesting wild mushrooms. So I have a few books that I'd like to share with you. Now, this is my little field guide that I bring everywhere along with me. It's called All That the Rain Promises and More, from David Aurora. And this is one of the best little pocket field guides that you can bring along with you. And I'm kind of old-fashioned when it comes to books, but there are apps on your phone that you can take pictures of. And, you know, some reason I'm just a little bit skeptical about that. But there are a few apps. One is called Book of Mushrooms. One is called Mushroom Identify. One is called Shroomify. But I really have not used those apps personally. I don't do that with plants either. I'm a big bibliophile, and I love looking at books. So and reading from paper. That's my preferred method. So All That the Rain Promises and More. It's a great little field guide, to which this larger book, Mushrooms Demystified, which is also by David Aurora, the mycologist from Northern California. This book is quite thick, so what I would do is have this book along with me as a pocket field guide, and then come home, and this has a lot more in-depth information. There's a lot of different books, North American mushrooms, but these are kind of my primary identification guides for Northern California. David Aurora does a lot of foraging in Northern California, and it's just a really great little book. So when you're out and about foraging for mushrooms, what you want to do is look for certain characteristics. Now, we're looking at where is the mushroom growing? Is it coming from the soil? Is it growing on a tree? Is it coming from a dead piece of wood? That is one of the main characteristics. There are different types of shapes of mushrooms that is also an identification characteristic. Like in this book here, there's a lot of different shapes. And so you want to note the shape of the mushroom. Mushrooms we're going to be talking about today that I harvest frequently are just a handful of mushrooms that are really easy to identify and are really delicious. So beyond the shape of the mushroom, it's also really important to find out how is the underside of the mushroom. What type of what type of spore body does the mushroom have? Sometimes there'll be gills, there'll be spore tubes. There's different shapes to the gilled mushrooms. And so all of these things are all characteristics that help you to truly identify a mushroom. And another really important characteristic and identification technique is making a spore print. Now, this is also a really fun kind of science and art project that is really just really amazing and fascinating to do. All spores are a little bit different colors, and they give a shape similar to a fingerprint. So the spore print is the best identification characteristic of a mushroom, particularly if you're discovering a new mushroom and really want to study to find out exactly what type of mushroom it is. I recommend that you do this with mushrooms that you find, even just to familiarize yourself with the type of spore print that the mushroom has. Now, in order to make a spore print, you cut the stalk off of the mushroom and place the cap face down, or spores gills down, on a piece of paper. Now, some mushroom spores are very light colored, so I always recommend getting a colored paper, like some, construction paper. There are light colors, and then with dark colors, because some of the spores are even white. So they make a beautiful print, and that's how you can really closely identify them. Yes, foil works also. It's very artistic too. So it's a kind of a little project I've done with my kids, making spore prints. And so you put the mushroom on the paper or the medium that you're imprinting, and you let it sit, up to overnight. And then you pick up the mushrooms and you will see the print that it leaves behind. And then you can research in your Mushrooms Demystified or other books to find out what exactly the mushroom is. And so the mycelium of mushrooms is an important factor as well. Studies have shown that there are incredible medicinal properties, not just in the fruiting body, but also in the mycelium. And I'd also like to recommend for any mycophiles, such as myself, Mycelium Running by Paul Stamens. Paul Stamens is, I was lucky enough to have him as a teacher, and I've seen him lecture several times, and he's an incredible mycologist and a pioneer, definitely, in mushroom science. And Mycelium Running is a really wonderful book that teaches us about growing mushrooms and how to utilize mycelium, and all of these different studies that have been shown about mycelium and mushrooms in general. Something so fascinating to me is also mycelium is just rich with so many different properties, and not only does it digest and decompose things in the forest and create nutrients that are more readily available for trees and plants to tap into, but it's also incredibly antimicrobial in its presentation as it passes through different parts of soil structure. And it's also can be used as a pesticide and a miticide. There's been studies shown on mycelium in bee colonies to help with colony collapse, which the mycelium will I almost called it innervating. It's kind of because it makes me think of nervous system, but it will will reach out through a honeybee population in the colony and reduce the mites that are seen as being responsible for colony collapse. So just incredible life forms. So now we're going to move away from the mycelium. So the spores, mycelium, and then it rains, and then we have these beautiful fruiting bodies of mushrooms. So I'm going to go through a few very distinct mushrooms that we harvest here in the Sierra Nevada. And so what I'm going to do is click on this and share my screen with you. Hopefully that works. Yeah, thank you. So here we have a little bolete harvest that I am a porcini lover. I love boletes. This is Boletus edulis, king boletes. We have queen boletes, aspen boletes, and they are one of my favorite and most delicious mushrooms. They're also called porcinis, and people in Italy harvest these a lot, and they're just delicious. And I'll go through and kind of talk about a few recipes for that too, and tell you a little bit about boletes. Boletes are typically found in grassy areas, underneath, pine needle duff, and in the trees. And then sorry, a little distraction. And oftentimes you'll be going around and you look for what's called a mushroom, and it's just like this little tuft in the soil, and oftentimes you won't even see a mushroom, but you'll see a little hump in the soil, and you kind of move the soil aside, and oftentimes there'll be a mushroom there. So boletes are incredibly delicious mushrooms. They have that classic little like mushroom shape. They have a spore tube, which if you turn it over and look at the underside of a bolete, it looks kind of just usually a nice fresh mushroom will be white underneath. And let's see if I can show you this. So here underneath the mushroom cap are those filamentous spore tubes. So this particular mushroom doesn't have gills, which is a really incredible identification factor. I don't typically mess around with a lot of gilled mushrooms because the most deadly mushrooms are gilled mushrooms. So I stick to what I know. And this type of spore tube is really, really easy to identify. So as you can see with this picture, the underneath of the cap is where you look for what type of gill or spore tube or what structure it has. And the bolete is just this beautiful little mushroom, classic mushroom shape. It's typically very firm to the touch. And the whole thing is edible. Bolete mushrooms are really high in protein, has about 11 grams of protein per 100 gram serving size. It's very high in iron and manganese and amino acids. It has this really incredible profile, nutrient profile, which is one of the reasons I really love harvesting mushrooms. You get such an incredible boost of nutrient density in this little fruiting body. And so not only the nutrient aspect of it, but eating wild foods is really, really important to diversify the nutrient profile of our diets. Oftentimes, cultivated foods in our agricultural system are devoid of a lot of nutrients and minerals in particular because of the overuse of the soil. And we don't take nearly as much time reviving soil with mycelium and different types of natural processes that happen in the wild. So in the wild, you get different types of soil nutrients, and mushrooms really pull all of those nutrients out. So another thing to be careful of when you're harvesting mushrooms is, where are you harvesting from? Mycelium has a really incredible knack of drawing out a lot of different attributes from the soil. So this can include, and does include, toxic substances. If you are near a road, or if there's even some toxic waste nearby, mushrooms the mycelium will gather that, and it will be catalyzed in the fruiting body of the mushroom. So really important to know the area that you're harvesting from, and make sure it's an area that's like devoid of toxic chemicals and waste products, and it's a clean forested area. So here is another photo. This is just the other day I found some boletes, and if you look really closely at this photo that I'm sharing here, I'm a big fan of using a knife to cut the base of the mushroom instead of plucking it out, as not to disturb the mycelium. So I always cut the mushroom, but you can see in this photo, this particular bolete was full of bugs. And so that happens sometimes. So you want to inspect the mushroom in the field before gathering it. And sometimes you can kind of cut away any, little worms or bugs, and still use the mushroom. This particular one was a little bit older. And so what I do when I don't end up bringing home a mushroom is I will cut the mushroom cap up and kind of distribute the parts that will be spore body, and will lend the spores to the soil. So it helps the mycelium grow outward. And you, as a forager in the wild, what you want to focus on also is being a steward of the place that you're gathering from. And just like planting seeds from plants that you're harvesting, this is kind of a way of increasing the mycelial network. So you win some, you lose some. Sometimes you don't get a super fresh mushroom. But what I'll do typically with boletes is I'll take them home. And one of my favorite recipes for boletes is just slicing it just in its beautiful shape, like a 1/4 inch, and sauteing it with garlic, a little sea salt, and some olive oil. And it tastes incredible. It has a texture almost like meat, like chicken. I know everything tastes like chicken, but boletes really do have this interesting texture that is very meaty. And mushrooms readily take the place of meat in my diet when I can find a mushroom. I'd prefer to eat that over anything really. And a good way to preserve the harvest, and this is true with all mushrooms that I harvest, is dehydration. So I'll cut the mushrooms, boletes, morels, most mushrooms besides puffballs. Puffballs I just eat fresh, but I'll cut them and put them in my food dehydrator for a night or so, and then you can just kind of save them in a jar for the whole year, and then you rehydrate them, reconstitute them with a little bit of water or white wine, and let them puff back up, and then saute them again or put them in your recipe. But boletes are my favorite. Just a little bit of sear, fry them up, saute them with some garlic, sea salt, and olive oil. And then that's also a really nice way to preserve boletes. You can make a really delicious mushroom pate from, you cook the bolete and blend it up with a little more olive oil, a little more sea salt. Sometimes you can add a little pepper or rosemary or oregano, and then put it into a jar and top it off with a little bit more olive oil, just so it covers it. And then you can keep it in the refrigerator like that for a month or more, and just kind of scoop it on, and it's already cooked, so you can just enjoy it that way. I recommend always cooking mushrooms. I don't eat mushrooms raw because oftentimes, even store-bought mushrooms, you don't know really what's growing on that mushroom or where that mushroom came from, or what else might have come along and added a little extra special flavor to that mushroom. Another way to make sure it's nice and clean is you never want to wash mushrooms with water directly. You get a nice like a nice kitchen towel rag that you can use. You moisten the rag and you just wipe the mushroom down, or you cut off undesirable parts. So this is Boletus edulis, a delicious find, which they're going off right now. I've found a lot of boletes out and about in the Sierras, West Shore, South Shore, all around the lake recently. So that's been a nice little foraging moment. I do want to also talk about another mushroom that we had a really huge bumper crop year. These are morel mushrooms, Morchella species, and morels are also amazingly delicious. And you'll see how different the morel fruiting body is than the porcini fruiting body. And there are a couple of lookalikes with morels, none of them which are deadly, but some that can make you sick. So you want to really make sure that what you're getting is what you're getting. Morels are hollow inside, so that's one of the a good identification properties or characteristics of this mushroom. And morels can be dehydrated really readily. You just cut them in half and place them in the dehydrator. I love cooking morels with a little bit of butter, sea salt, and excuse me, one moment, sorry. Butter and sea salt, and then garlic. It's delicious in a creamy sauce. You can put it, put a splash of cream, or even if you're vegan, you can use, alternative milks or creams and olive oil instead of butter. But morels make a delicious creamy sauce. They just yield themselves to the cream and are such a rich flavor. I won't make pate usually with the morels. The porcini is a much more hardy mushroom and firm mushroom, so it yields a better kind of pate. But I'll definitely, if I make cream sauce with morels, you can freeze it to use at a later date. And they're really delicious. Morels are really high in manganese and iron and copper, amino acids, and vitamin D. Mushrooms are a really wonderful source of vitamin D and B complex. So morels, really delicious. We've had a huge morel year. Oh, and typically morels will grow in a previously burned area. So if you're out searching for morels, it's a good idea to begin on the outskirts of a burn, generally like a year after. That's when the flush starts happening of the morel fruiting bodies. So morels, delicious, and you can put that creamy morel sauce on pasta or meats, great with chicken and all sorts of foods. But the morels are so delicious. And then for the dehydrated morels, you can reconstitute them in a little bit of water. It changes the texture a little bit, but still delicious. Okay, and here we have a common puffball mushroom that grows in the Sierra here. This is the Talbovista subsculpta puffball mushroom, and you can see it has kind of scales on it. A lot of different types of puffball mushrooms out there. This one that grows in the Sierras can get really large. I harvested one that was like 3 times the size of my head last year, and the puffball is a delicious edible. It's kind of the consistency of tofu. And when you find a puffball, to positively identify it is you cut into it to make sure there's no shape. So it just is firm, and it should be white when it's fresh. And you can slice this mushroom up really similar to tofu. I cook it just kind of the same way. You could even make like a puffball steak, and you just fry it with some olive oil, again, rosemary, garlic, whatever flavors you like to eat, and just sear it and eat it that way. It's really delicious, just as is. But there are some mushrooms that will form what looks like a puffball, but when you cut into it, you can see the shape of the mushroom that it will turn into. And that leads me into a little discussion about some of the poisonous mushrooms. This is Amanita muscaria, also called fly agaric. And in this Amanita family is the most poisonous mushrooms. So, with names like the death cap and the destroying angel, it kind of gives you an idea of the potential poisonous and deadly nature of this family of mushrooms. And all Amanita mushrooms are veiled mushrooms. And so when they first emerge in their fruiting body, they'll be kind of encapsulated, and it looks like they're in a little egg. So it can kind of be a little bit misleading. And you might think, oh, look, here's a puffball. But when you slice it open, you'll see a very distinct like mushroom shape within inside that capsule. So all of the amanitas are veiled mushrooms, and they emerge kind of looking like an egg. And they're quite poisonous. I would not recommend experimenting with it. There are incredible stories and lore about this particular Amanita muscaria mushroom, and it's quite powerful psychedelic mushroom. It has a lot of properties and history and lore about its nature in mind-altering ways. And it's said that the origin myth of Santa Claus came from the Siberian tribesmen who this mushroom grows all over the world, and the tribesmen of this, and forgetting the tribe that is the name of this particular tribe, but it's a Siberian tribe where the mushrooms would be eaten by the reindeer, and then the shamans of the tribe would drink the urine of the reindeer. And that's where the origin myth of Santa Claus came from, like with the red and the white and flying reindeer and on and on. So that's a whole nother class talking about the mind altering effects of mushrooms, of which is another, healing attribute in and of itself. But I wouldn't really mess around with fly agaric or this amanita because it's potentially deadly. But something to keep an eye out when you are foraging, and if you think you've come across a puffball, cut it open and find out. One more mushroom I wanted to share with you. This is a photo I took just the other day. This is again a derma species. This is a polypore mushroom. It grows on trees or wood. And this is Ganoderma orensis. So it's in the family of reishi, which has been used for thousands and thousands of years in traditional Chinese medicine. It is Ganoderma, same family, and they call the reishi mushroom the mushroom of immortality. Now, this isn't really an edible mushroom per se. However, you can powder it up and make it into a tea or a drink, or make it into a tincture. In my apothecary, I have several functional mushroom beverages, like I'm drinking right now. It's called Not Coffee, and it's made with Ganoderma mushroom and turkey tail and a couple of other mushrooms powdered, mixed with herbs, and it kind of tastes like coffee. And you can make a drink like that, like just putting the mushroom powder into hot water or milk. It's delicious, and it has immune enhancing properties, anti-cancer properties, and just an incredible source of medicinal value. And this Ganoderma grows all around, and you'll notice the difference between this shiny one and this one, which is just that powder that's covering the shiny outer portion of the mushroom are spores. So it's just covered in spore dust. But that's what you'll kind of see when it's not rained very much. They're typically powdery like that, covered in spore dust. And so let's see, I know we are getting a little closer to the end of our discussion here. And I was going to turn it over to Jen to help me kind of see what any questions might come up. If anybody has any questions, please go ahead and shoot them into the text box, and I will try to answer your questions as best as possible.
Hey, awesome. Thank you, Gina. So let's see. We do have quite a few questions started here. But before we get into that, I just wanted to, let's see. Let's see. I have a list here going. So anyway, I just wanted to thank Gina, first of all, for sharing her vast knowledge of mushrooms in the Sierra. You're making me very hungry.
Yeah.
It makes me want to get outside, especially in the fall. It always seems like such a good time for mushroom hunting. So I I also wanted to invite all of our attendees to contribute to the Sierra Nevada Alliance to help keep our monthly webinars free and accessible to all. If you're able, you can visit sierranevadaalliance.org/donate or text WILD SNA to 530-456-4967, and you can help protect the Sierra now and for the future. So I'm going to get into some of the questions here for you, Gina. Have you ever found chanterelles in the Tahoe Basin?
Yes, there are a variety of chanterelles. It's a species. It's called scaly cap chanterelles, and it looks a little bit different than other chanterelles, and they are not edible. They have some toxins that will make you have digestive disturbances. So that's the only chanterelle that I have found in the Tahoe Basin, is that scaly cap chanterelle in Mendocino County, where I lived and was a chef there for a couple of years. We would find an incredible amount of different types of chanterelles that are amazingly delicious. But here I've only seen the scaly cap variety that is not edible.
Okay, next question. Can you grow mushrooms inside in the Sierra? This person has a daughter-in-law that grows mushrooms in baskets in Alaska.
Awesome. Yes, and thanks for that question. I wanted to really tout the benefits of growing your own mushrooms. Yes, you can grow them indoors. You can grow any mushroom indoors, really, that you can access spores of. And, you know, you'd have to create an ecosystem for them. Another great way is you just grow them in your kitchen indoors. There's really great mushroom growing kits. There's a company called Lake Tahoe Mushrooms. I believe that's their name. I'm so sorry. It's a newer company, and they're selling mushroom growing kits. And you could grow oyster mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, all types of different delicious mushrooms. But you need a substrate and some spores or mycelium inoculated wood. And you can also grow them out. And I encourage you to grow them in your garden, because not only will you get a beautiful flush of fruiting mushrooms, but it will inoculate the soil, the web around your garden, and really pump up all of the vegetables and herbs that you're growing in your garden. Tahoe Mushroom Company, yes, thank you.
Yes, I actually have purchased one of those for a family member, and it grew like so big. It was crazy.
Oh, it's so cool to just have that. You could do that all year round too. So it's so nice, you know, just like go forage in your kitchen.
Right. Can you say the name of that last mushroom one more time, or spell it out for us?
The polypore, the reishi.
Yes.
It is Ganoderma, Ganoderma. Ganoderma is the genus, and the species that we have here, we have a couple different ones. We have the Oregon's and an Appalatum, but reishi, it's in the reishi family, Reishi.
Yeah, thank you. October morels. So is this unheard of?
You know, it's pretty rare, but the weather has been nice. I just saw morels 2 days ago, so it's still happening. And you know, the weather this year was really kind of mild, and we had kind of extended rain periods, so you can always look for mushrooms. And I did see somebody's question about what is the initiative like factor about going to go look for mushrooms. And yes, after a rain, like one day after a rain, you can start looking for mushrooms, up to a couple of weeks after, really.
Great. How easily identifiable is chicken of the woods?
Oh, great. Yes. So that's another mushroom that you can find here in the Tahoe Basin. There are several other mushrooms, and if we had longer periods, we could talk about them all. Chicken of the woods is very identifiable. It's a shelf mushroom. Also, it grows on wood. It always has, a very distinctive shape, and it tears as it grows. A delicious mushroom. It's firm in texture, and better though, flavor profile wise, I found when grown on hardwood. You can find them on conifers, and the flavor is just a little bit different. But
So, yeah. So there's, a long list of questions here. And what I'm going to do is, Gina, if it's okay with you, I can share your email address if some of these questions haven't gotten answered, and then they could potentially reach out to you directly because it is approaching 1 o'clock here right now.
Okay, I did just see one question pop up about turkey tails, and turkey tails are not a Ganoderma. They're Trametes is the genus, and there's different species. Those do also grow around the basin, but actually more at a lower elevation. So in the foothills, you can find them, and I utilize them in a lot of the medicines at the apothecary. But yes, email me questions, and if anybody wants to reach out, you can go and email me via my website, which is woodsapothecary.org, or thewooodsapothecary@gmail.com.
Yes, and I will share all of these links, and this was such a great conversation and interesting topic. I have like 10 more questions here, but of course we don't have time to get to them all, but I encourage everyone to visit Gina's website. Like I said, I'll share, and she just shared her email address, but we want to thank you so much, Gina, and thank you everyone who attended today. We will have a recording of this webinar available very shortly on our website, and then we will also email you the link to the recording for you to reference later. And if you want to, share it with anyone else, we'll do that. And then we will be sending out a brief evaluation so that we can share this feedback with Gina and also just make our webinars the best that they can be for the future. So I also wanted to invite you to join us on November 15th. We have Chris, the communications director from the El Dorado Community Foundation, and he will be doing a presentation to improve branding, messaging, and communications for your business, nonprofit, agency. And so look on our website, our Facebook, and our email blasts for that information. Gina, did you have anything else you wanted to share before we sign off?
There are a couple of really great mushroom groups. If you are involved with Facebook, there's a Lake Tahoe mushroom identification group. There's the California mushroom identification group on Facebook. Really nice little community, discussions about mushrooms. And also, I thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you guys, and best of luck in your foraging. And I teach classes all throughout the year on different types of medicinal herbs, and I am really excited. We're opening a location in town where we're going to be having a full herb school and classes all year round on medicinal herbs and mushrooms and medicine making. So keep an eye on that, and I'll be keeping you posted on my website, woodsapothecary.org. I hope everybody had a really nice and informative hour spent together, and happy foraging.
Thank you, Gina, and everyone have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.